At 6:17 on a Monday morning, before the city had fully decided whether to wake up, Marcus Hale saw the one thing no one in that marble lobby was supposed to notice. The chief executive officer of Whitmore Meridian walked through the revolving glass doors wearing two different shoes. One black, one navy blue. Both expensive, both polished, both wrong together. Marcus did not stare. That was the first kindness. He was standing behind the maintenance console with a paper cup of black coffee cooling beside his elbow, a voltage tester clipped to his belt, and yesterday's fatigue still sitting heavy behind his eyes. The lobby around him was all glass, stone, and quiet money. 30-foot ceilings. White orchids on a steel table. Security cameras tucked into corners like silent witnesses. Every sound carried too clearly. The click of heels. The low hum of elevators. The soft swipe of an access badge. Vivian Whitmore moved through that space like she owned every inch of it because, in a legal sense, she did. Her white blazer was sharp enough to cut light. Her hair was tied low at the back of her neck. Her phone kept buzzing in her hand, one vibration after another, but she did not look down. People made room for her without being asked. The receptionist straightened. The junior analysts lowered their voices. A man holding a leather portfolio stepped aside so quickly his coffee almost spilled. Vivian did not notice any of them. Marcus noticed that too. He had been fixing buildings long enough to understand when something looked perfect only from far away. A cracked pipe could hide behind fresh paint. A bad wire could sit quietly inside a wall for years before anyone smelled smoke. And a woman like Vivian Whitmore could walk into her own headquarters looking flawless from the knees up, while the truth tapped unevenly against the floor beneath her. Black heel, navy heel, black heel, navy heel. The sound was almost the same, but not quite. Marcus heard the difference before he let himself see it. This was not the first time. That was what made his hand tighten around the edge of the console. 2 weeks earlier, it had been a suede pump and a leather one on a rainy Thursday. Last Friday, cream and white, close enough for a distracted eye to forgive. But today was different. The colors were too far apart. The mistake had teeth. A young woman at the front desk glanced down. Her eyes widened. Just a flicker, but flickers were how cruelty started in office buildings. One look became another. One smirk became a message. One message became a photo no one admitted taking. Marcus moved before the thought finished forming. He lifted a stack of maintenance reports from the console and placed them on the reception counter, blocking the young woman's view as naturally as if he had planned it all morning. Cooling system on 42 may run warm until 9, he said, his voice low, steady, ordinary. The receptionist looked up at him, annoyed by the interruption. That was fine. Annoyance was better than gossip. Vivian passed within 6 feet of him, close enough for Marcus to catch the faint scent of expensive perfume underneath something more human. Rain on wool. Coffee gone cold. A night without sleep. Her face gave nothing away. Not to the lobby. Not to the cameras. Not to the employees watching from safe distances. But as she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed again, and for the first time, her eyes dropped. Not to the screen. Lower. To her feet. The world did not stop. Elevators still opened. Keycards still beeped. Somewhere outside, a siren dragged itself through midtown traffic. But Vivian Whitmore's body went still for half a second. Just half a second. Long enough for a woman who ran a billion-dollar company to understand that she had left her house wearing the wrong life on one foot. Marcus looked away before she could look up. That was the second kindness. The elevator door slid open. Vivian stepped inside. Her chin rose before the doors closed, as if pride itself had pressed a hand between her shoulder blades and told her to keep standing. Marcus watched only the reflection on the polished floor, blurred and stretched beneath the morning light. Then the door shut. The lobby breathed again. The receptionist reached for her phone. Marcus set one hand gently on the stack of reports. You might want to log that cooling notice. First, he said. She sighed, rolled her eyes, and opened the maintenance portal instead. No one thanked him. No one knew there was anything to thank. Marcus picked up his coffee. It had gone cold. He drank it anyway. By 6:19, the lobby had already forgotten. But Marcus had not. Because this was the third time Vivian Whitmore had worn two different shoes. And the third time he had said nothing. By 6:31, Marcus was in the service corridor behind the lobby, replacing a burned-out ballast above the freight elevator while the building pretended nothing had happened. That was what buildings did. They swallowed embarrassment, secrets, footsteps, and lies, then polished the floor before anyone important arrived. He stood on a 6-foot ladder with a screwdriver between his fingers, listening to the quiet machinery behind the walls. Air ducts breathing, pipes ticking, elevators rising with important people inside them. On the other side of the service door, Vivian Whitmore was already on the 42nd floor, probably speaking in that calm, clipped voice that made grown executives sit straighter. Marcus had heard it before through open conference doors. She did not waste words. She did not repeat herself. She did not seem like the kind of woman who could leave her own closet without noticing what was on her feet. That was why the first time had stayed with him. It had been raining hard that morning, the kind of New York rain that turned umbrellas inside out and made cab tires hiss along the curb. Vivian had entered through the east doors with water on the shoulders of her coat and one hand pressed against a phone at her ear. Her voice had been low, but every word had landed sharp. "No, I said move the meeting, not the deadline." Then she had stopped near the security gate, eyes closing for 1 second too long. Marcus had been kneeling beside an access panel, tightening a loose wire. He saw the shoes then. One black suede, one black leather. Clothes, but not the same. A mistake only visible to someone used to noticing small differences before they became expensive problems. Near the front desk, an intern in a blue suit had lifted his phone, smiling like he had found a little crack in a marble statue. Marcus had reached into his metal parts tray and tipped it with his knuckle. Screws scattered across the floor with a bright, embarrassing clatter. Everyone looked at him. The intern lowered the phone. Vivian walked through. Marcus apologized to the room, gathered the screws one by one, and let his knees ache against the stone. He told himself it was nothing. People had bad mornings. Fathers had them. Widows had them. People with money had them too, even if the world acted surprised when their hands shook. But then came the second time. Cream on the left, white on the right. Vivian had noticed before anyone else did that day. Marcus had seen it from across the lobby, the way her stride changed near the elevator bank. Not slower. Never that. Just tighter. Like she had stepped on a memory and refused to limp. A man from finance had whispered something to another man by the coffee stand. Marcus could not hear every word, but he heard enough. She is finally slipping. Marcus had walked past with a coil of orange extension cord over one shoulder and said, without turning his head, "Sound carries near the elevators." Nothing more. No threat. No lecture. Just a fact. The men had gone quiet because facts, spoken by the right kind of calm, could still shame a room. Now, on the ladder, Marcus tightened the last screw and looked down the empty corridor. His own phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his daughter, "Nia? School forgot it is picture day? I wore the green sweater. Is that bad?" Marcus smiled before he could stop himself. His thumb hovered over the screen. "No, baby. Green is strong. I will fix your collar when I get there." He sent it, then slipped the phone away. For a moment, the corridor felt warmer than the lobby. Then the service door opened. 2 junior executives stepped in, laughing under their breath. They stopped when they saw him on the ladder. One of them gave him the quick, empty glance people gave maintenance workers when they wanted furniture to move by itself. "You hear about Whitmore this morning?" the other whispered. Marcus climbed down slowly. He folded the ladder with care. Metal clicked against metal. The sound was small, but it ended their laughter. He did not ask what they meant. He did not have to. He only lifted his toolbox, met neither man's eyes, and said, "Elevator cameras cover this hallway." Their faces changed. Not much. Enough. Marcus walked past them toward the freight elevator, his boots quiet on the rubber floor. Upstairs, Vivian Whitmore was still standing in front of people who expected perfection. Downstairs, Marcus Hale carried a toolbox, a cold coffee, and a secret that was not his to spend. The freight elevator carried Marcus upward in a box of brushed steel and tired fluorescent light. He stood with his toolbox at his feet and his hands folded over the handle, watching the red numbers climb. 34. 35, 36. By the time the doors opened on 42, the air changed. It always did. Downstairs, the building smelled like floor wax, coffee, and rainwater dragged in from the street. Up here, it smelled like cold glass, expensive perfume, and decisions that could move money across oceans before lunch. Marcus stepped into the executive corridor and kept to the side. He had been called up for a flickering light outside conference room A, but the room was already full. Through the frosted glass, voices rose and flattened in turns. Not loud. Never loud. Rich people had a way of cutting each other quietly. He set his toolbox down beside the wall panel and began removing the cover. The bulb above him pulsed once, then dimmed, then pulsed again. A small failure in a hallway built to hide failure. Inside the conference room, Vivian's voice came through first. Controlled. Level. 2 level. We are not delaying the acquisition because 2 board members feel uncomfortable with the optics. A man answered, smooth and pleased with himself. Optics are the business, Vivian. Marcus paused with the screwdriver still in his hand. Not because of the argument. He heard arguments every week. But because Vivian did not answer right away. The silence after her name stretched thin. Then her voice returned. The business is whether we keep our word. The room went quiet. Marcus turned the screw another quarter inch. He had never heard anyone say that sentence on the executive floor. Not in those words. Not with that kind of weight. A few seconds later, the door opened sharply. A young assistant stepped out with a tablet clutched to her chest. Her eyes were bright, her mouth tight. She almost walked into Marcus. Sorry, she whispered. No harm done, Marcus said, shifting the toolbox out of her path. She looked back at the conference room, then down the hallway, as if deciding which direction was safer. They are in rare form today. Marcus gave a small nod. Not agreement. Just permission for her to keep moving. She hurried toward the elevators. Before the door swung shut, Marcus saw Vivian at the head of the table. She was standing, one hand pressed flat against a stack of reports. The other held her phone so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She looked perfect again from a distance. The black shoes had been hidden beneath the long conference table. The navy one too. That was how power worked sometimes. It only needed the right furniture. Marcus replaced the faulty ballast, clipped the panel back into place, and tested the light. It steadied overhead, clean and white. He was packing his tools when the conference room door opened again. Vivian stepped out alone. Up close, the morning had left small marks on her. A crease near one eye. A faint shadow beneath the makeup. A loose strand of hair caught against her collar. Her phone vibrated in her hand. She looked at the screen and did not answer. Marcus lifted his toolbox slightly. Light is fixed, ma'am. She did not respond at first. Her eyes were on the hallway carpet, but not really. Then she looked up at him. For one strange second, her face softened with recognition she did not seem to expect. Daniel, she said, barely above a breath. Marcus went still. The name did not belong to him. He could feel that immediately. It came out of her like something misplaced, like a key found in the wrong coat pocket. Vivian blinked. The softness vanished. Her shoulders drew back. Her face closed so fast, it almost looked painful. I am sorry, she said. Mr. Hale. I meant Mr. Hale. It is all right, Marcus said. He did not ask who Daniel was. He did not let curiosity reach his face. He only bent, lashed his toolbox, and stood with the same quiet he used around sleeping children and live wires. Vivian watched him for a second longer than courtesy required. People in her world filled silence with questions, invoices, leverage, concerns shaped like ownership. Marcus filled it with space. Down the hall, laughter broke from inside the conference room. A man said something Marcus could not catch, and another voice answered with a low chuckle. Vivian's jaw tightened. She looked toward the closed door, then at the elevator, then nowhere at all. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she silenced it without looking. How long has that light been flickering? She asked. Since last week, Marcus said. It only showed when the hallway was quiet. Vivian absorbed that. A small sentence. A maintenance answer. Maybe something else. She nodded once. Thank you for fixing it. Marcus gave her the same nod he would have given anyone. Yes, ma'am. He stepped toward the service corridor, leaving her with the steady light and the sound of people waiting behind glass. But before the door closed behind him, he glanced back just once. Vivian had not returned to the conference room. She stood alone under the repaired light, looking down at her mismatched shoes as if they had finally told her something she could no longer ignore. By noon, the repaired light outside conference room had stopped flickering, but Marcus could still feel that hallway in his bones. Some places held tension the way old basements held damp air. It stayed after everyone left. He spent the next few hours moving between floors with a work order list clipped to his belt. A clogged sink on 31. A thermostat complaint on 28. A broken drawer in a legal office where no one looked up long enough to say his name. That was fine. Marcus had learned years ago that being unseen could be useful if a man refused to let it make him small. At 3:42, he was in the loading bay signing for a box of replacement filters when his phone buzzed again. Nia, picture day was terrible. My collar looked weird. Marcus read the message twice. Outside the open bay door, a delivery truck groaned backward with a long warning beep. He wiped his thumb on his work pants and typed slowly. Send me the photo when you get it. Weird collars still count as memories. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then came her reply. Mom would have fixed it better. Marcus stared at the screen until the delivery driver asked where to leave the filters. For a second, the loading bay blurred around the edges. Then he slid the phone into his pocket and signed the tablet. Stack them by the service wall, he said. His voice came out steady because steady was a habit, not a feeling. He lifted the first box himself. 40 pounds. Maybe a little more. Enough weight to make his shoulder complain, not enough to give him permission to stop. By 5:18, the building had entered that strange hour when executives were still pretending the day was young and cleaning crews were already waiting for the night to begin. Marcus was crossing the lobby with a coil of cable when he saw Vivian again near the side entrance. She had changed something. Not the shoes. The black and navy pair were still there, partly hidden by the straight fall of her trousers. But her posture had shifted. In the morning, she had moved like a blade. Now she moved like someone holding the blade by the wrong end. A man in a charcoal suit followed her, speaking too close to her shoulder. The board needs confidence, Vivian. Today did not help. She kept walking. The board received the numbers. The board received a performance. Marcus slowed without seeming to. He knelt by the access panel near the security desk and opened his toolbox. The man lowered his voice, but not enough. You cannot afford to look unstable right now. Vivian stopped. The lobby did not stop with her, but it leaned. A receptionist glanced up. A security guard pretended to study his monitor. The man in the charcoal suit gave a small, polished smile, the kind that looked clean until it touched something human. I am only saying what everyone else is thinking. Marcus reached into the wall panel and turned off the decorative fountain near the orchids. The sudden silence cut through the lobby. Water stopped falling. The man looked over, irritated. Is that necessary? Marcus did not look at him. Pressure valve is knocking, he said. If I ignore it, it gets louder. The words were plain. Work words. But Vivian heard them. Marcus saw it in the smallest turn of her head. The man gave a short laugh. Maintenance wisdom. Marcus closed the panel with care and stood. He was taller than the man by 3 inches, but he did not use it. He kept his voice even. Most systems warn you before they fail. People usually hear it too late. The lobby went quiet in that dangerous way quiet rooms do when everyone understands more than what was said. The man's smile thinned. Vivian turned toward Marcus then. Not fully. Just enough. Her eyes met his for 1 second. There was no gratitude in them. Not yet. Gratitude would have been too easy. There was suspicion. Frustration. A question she did not want to ask. Why did you see that? Why did you say it that way? Why are you standing there like you know the weight of a room? Marcus bent, picked up his cable, and gave the man a polite nod. Fountain should be back on in 10 minutes. He walked toward the service hall before anyone could turn the moment into something bigger. Behind him, Vivian said nothing. Neither did the man. At 6:05, Marcus found her in the parking garage. Not on purpose. He had come down to check a sensor near the employee exit, where the overhead lights kept timing out too soon. The lower level was mostly empty. All concrete pillars and painted arrows, with the smell of oil and rain trapped under the ceiling. He heard the uneven footsteps first. Black heel, navy heel, then no heel at all. He turned the corner by column C, 17, and stopped. Vivian sat on the low concrete curb beside her reserved space, one shoe in her hand, the other still on her foot. Her phone lay face down beside her. The screen kept lighting up against the gray floor. She looked smaller down there. Not weak. Never that. Just removed from the architecture that usually made her look untouchable. Marcus stayed several feet away, far enough to leave her pride room to breathe. Motion sensor is faulty, he said quietly, holding up the small plastic part in his hand. Lights may cut out if I do not replace it. Vivian looked up at him. Her eyes were tired enough to be honest. Of course they will, she said. The lights above them blinked once, then steadied. Marcus did not smile. He set his toolbox down, took a clean pair of disposable shoe covers from the side pocket, and placed them on the curb within reach. Not too close. Floor is cold, he said. Vivian looked at the shoe covers, then at him. You always carry those? This building leaks in expensive places. A sound almost became a laugh in her throat, but did not make it out. She looked away toward the rows of dark cars. You heard him upstairs. I heard the fountain. That is not what I asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. A car passed somewhere above them, tires humming over concrete. Yes, ma'am, he said. I heard enough. Vivian's fingers tightened around the navy shoe. And Marcus looked toward the exit ramp instead of at her face. And I figured you did not need another person making a hard day heavier. The phone lit up again. Neither of them reached for it. Vivian lowered her eyes. For the first time all day, she let her shoulders fall. Just an inch. But in a woman like her, an inch was a confession. Vivian did not put the shoe covers on right away. She looked at them like they were a language she had forgotten how to read. Cheap. Blue. Disposable. The kind of thing visitors wore when pipes burst or carpets flooded. Nothing in her life was supposed to come wrapped in thin plastic and kindness. Marcus waited beside his toolbox, not watching her directly. That mattered. Some people offered help like a spotlight. Marcus offered it like shade. The garage lights hummed above them. Far off, an elevator bell rang, then disappeared into concrete. Vivian slid her bare foot into one cover, then the other. The plastic wrinkled around her toes. It looked ridiculous beneath the tailored hem of her trousers. It also looked like relief. She set both shoes beside her on the curb, black and navy, polished and useless for the moment. You knew before today, she said. Marcus picked up the motion sensor and turned it over in his palm, checking the small cracked casing. Yes, ma'am. How many times? He did not answer fast. Fast answers could feel like accusation. Enough to know it was not carelessness. Vivian's mouth tightened. Not anger exactly. Something nearer to shame trying to defend itself. That is a generous assumption. Not really. He crouched near the wall panel and began loosening the screws. Careless people usually make noise about how busy they are. Tired people just keep moving. The words landed between them and stayed there. Vivian looked down at the phone beside her. The screen lit again. This time Marcus saw the name, not because he meant to, but because light has a way of telling on people. Whitmore Board Liaison. Vivian turned the phone over with one finger until the name disappeared. I used to think silence meant control, she said. Her voice was low now, stripped of the executive edge. If I did not explain, no one could use the explanation against me. Marcus removed the old sensor from its bracket. A thin line of dust marked the wall around it. Sometimes that is true. She looked at him. Most people would have told her she was wrong. Most people liked simple lessons when the pain belonged to someone else. Marcus kept working. Vivian let out a breath, almost a laugh, but tired. You do not say much. My daughter says I use up all my words telling her to brush her teeth. That got the smallest smile from her. It was gone quickly, but not before it changed her face. The lobby version of Vivian Whitmore would never have allowed it to stay. This version seemed too tired to stop it. How old is she? 8. That is a good age. It is a loud age. Vivian looked toward the empty row of reserved cars. I do not know many children. They are honest in dangerous ways. That sounds terrifying. It can be. Marcus clipped the new sensor into place. The garage lights blinked once, then brightened over them, no longer struggling to decide whether the space deserved illumination. Vivian watched the light settle across the concrete. Is her mother around? The question came softly, but it still changed the air. Marcus kept his hand on the screwdriver. For 1 second, the garage seemed to hold its breath. Then he tightened the last screw. No, ma'am. Vivian did not apologize. That was its own kind of grace. She only nodded, once, accepting the edge she had touched and stepping back from it. Daniel was my brother, she said after a while. Marcus looked at the wall panel, not at her. The name from upstairs. Yes. Her fingers rested on the navy shoe. He used to notice things. Too much, sometimes. If I skipped lunch, he knew. If I said I was fine, he heard the lie before I did. He could tell when I was exhausted by the way I set my keys down. A car engine started on the far side of the garage. Headlights swept across a pillar, then moved away. Vivian waited until the sound faded. He died 6 months ago. Marcus closed the panel cover with a careful click. He had learned that grief did not like sudden movement. I am sorry, he said. Nothing more. Not the bright, polished sympathy people handed out like business cards. Just 2 words, set down gently. Vivian stared at him, as if the lack of extra words had reached her more than any speech could have. Since then, ordinary things have become strange, she said. Closets, calendars, breakfast, shoes. Her voice did not break. That almost made it heavier. Marcus sat back on his heels. Grief can make small things weigh 100 pounds. Vivian looked at him then. Really looked. The maintenance uniform. The tired eyes. The steady hands. The way he carried sorrow without advertising it. You say that like you know. Marcus gathered the old sensor, the loose screws, the scrap of plastic. He placed each piece into the toolbox where it belonged. Order mattered when the heart had none. I know a little. She did not push. For the first time, the silence between them was not defensive. It was shared. The phone lit again, face down, glowing against the concrete like a trapped signal. Vivian did not touch it. Marcus stood and lifted his toolbox. Lights should hold now. Vivian looked up at him from the curb, still wearing the blue covers over her feet, still not quite ready to return to the version of herself waiting upstairs. And if they do not? Marcus gave a small nod toward the ceiling. Then I come back down and fix what I can. He walked toward the service door, leaving her with the steady lights, the mismatched shoes, and a sentence that felt larger than maintenance. Some people only noticed what was wrong so they could name it. Others noticed because they were already reaching for a way to keep you standing. The next morning arrived pale and cold, with a thin gray light pressed against the glass walls of Whitmore Meridian like the city was still deciding whether to forgive Monday. Marcus came in at 5:48 with Nia beside him, her backpack hanging off one shoulder and her picture day envelope folded in her hand. She had insisted on bringing it, even though the photographs would not be ready for weeks. Children did that. They carried proof of things before proof existed. Her green sweater was buttoned wrong at the top, and one side of her collar curled inward like a tired leaf. Marcus noticed before they reached the security desk. He set his toolbox down, crouched in front of her, and fixed it gently. There, he said. Now you look like you run the place. Nia gave him a serious look. I do not want to run a place. I want a dog rescue with pancakes. Strong business model. She smiled, then looked down at her shoes. One lace was white. The other was purple. Marcus had replaced the missing lace the night before with the only spare he could find in the kitchen drawer. Nia had liked it. She said matching was boring unless socks were involved. Marcus had not argued. He had learned to save his corrections for things that actually harmed a child. A crooked collar did not. A purple shoelace did not. Shame did. He walked her to the small security office near the west wall, where a retired guard named Earl let her sit before school when Marcus had early calls. The office smelled like black coffee, pencil shavings, and the peppermint candy Earl kept in a jar even though he claimed it was for guests. Nia took out her homework and spread it across the narrow desk. Marcus checked his watch. He had 40 minutes before he had to take her to the bus stop 2 blocks over. Fractions first, he said. You always say that like fractions are vegetables. Because both make you stronger and neither cares about your opinion. Nia groaned, but she opened the workbook. Marcus stepped back into the lobby just as Vivian entered through the revolving doors. Today, everything matched. Black coat, black heels, dark hair smooth against her collar. A leather bag tucked beneath one arm. From a distance, the old armor had returned. But Marcus saw what armor could not hide. She paused just inside the doors, not because of her shoes, but because the lobby seemed louder than yesterday. 2 people near the coffee station stopped talking when she passed. A man at the elevators looked down too quickly. Vivian felt it. Marcus watched the knowledge move through her shoulders, small and controlled. She did not turn. She did not confront anyone. She walked forward. Then Nia stepped out of the security office with her workbook in hand, searching for a pencil sharpener. She almost bumped into Vivian's path and froze. Marcus moved instantly, but Vivian had already stopped. For one clean second, the chief executive officer and the little girl stood facing each other in the center of all that stone and glass. Nia looked up at Vivian, then down at her heels, then back up again. Your shoes match today, she said. The lobby seemed to take a breath and forget to release it. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Nia, he said softly. Not sharp. Just a father's warning from across a room. Vivian lifted one hand, barely. It was not aimed at Nia. It was aimed at the moment, asking it not to break. They do, Vivian said. Her voice was quiet enough that only the nearest people heard. Nia nodded, satisfied, then lifted one foot to show her own purple lace. Mine do not. Daddy says matching is not the same as being okay. Marcus felt the sentence land before anyone reacted. It had been something he said the night before while kneeling on the kitchen floor, tying the purple lace beneath the yellow light, trying to make his daughter laugh after the message about her mother had hollowed out the room. He had not known children stored comfort word for word. Vivian looked at the lace. Her face did not change much, but the phone in her hand stopped being important. It buzzed once, twice. She did not check it. Your father sounds wise, she said. Nia shrugged with the brutal honesty of 8 years old. Sometimes. He burned grilled cheese last week. Earl coughed behind the security desk to hide a laugh. Marcus looked toward the floor, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Vivian saw it. Something in her own expression loosened, not into a full smile, but into the memory of one. I have burned more than grilled cheese, she said. Nia considered this with great seriousness. Do chief executive officers cook? Poorly, in my case. That is sad. It has been mentioned. The exchange lasted less than a minute. Nothing dramatic happened. No speech. No apology. No grand softening under the chandeliers. Just a powerful woman standing still long enough to be spoken to like a person, and a child who did not yet understand the rules that kept adults lonely. Marcus walked over and rested one hand lightly on Nia's backpack. Bus time in 10. Nia nodded and returned to the office, leaving the purple lace flashing behind her with every step. Vivian watched her go. When she looked back at Marcus, her eyes were different from the night before. Not healed, not safe, but less alone in the damage. She is very honest, Vivian said. That is the polite word for it. Daniel would have liked her. The name came easier this time, but it still carried weight. Marcus did not step closer. Sounds like he noticed things too. Vivian looked toward the elevators. The doors opened, spilling out people who immediately straightened when they saw her. The room was waiting for the old version of her to return. She inhaled, put her phone into her bag without checking it. Then she glanced once more toward the security office, where Nia was bent over fractions with a purple shoelace tapping against the chair leg. Maybe noticing is not the problem, Vivian said. Maybe it is what people do after. Marcus picked up his toolbox. Yes, ma'am. She walked to the elevator. This time, when the doors closed around her, she was not looking down at her feet. She was looking at the small office in the corner of the lobby, as if the warmest room in the building had never been on the executive floor at all. By 8:12 that morning, the lobby had gone back to performing itself. Shoes clicked, badges swiped, voices lowered near elevators and sharpened near deadlines. Marcus walked Nia to the bus stop on Madison Avenue, stood with her beneath a wind-bent maple tree, and watched her climb aboard with her backpack bouncing against one shoulder. She turned at the top step and lifted her hand. He lifted his back. A small thing. A daily thing. But daily things were how a life held itself together when the larger pieces had already broken. When he returned to Whitmore Meridian, Earl was leaning against the security desk, his reading glasses low on his nose. Your girl nearly made the boss smile, Earl said. Marcus picked up his toolbox from beside the west wall. That is above her pay grade. Earl chuckled, then nodded toward the elevator bank. Careful today. People upstairs are sniffing around. Marcus followed his gaze. 2 men from corporate communications stood near the coffee station, whispering over a phone. One of them glanced toward the front desk, then toward the ceiling cameras. Marcus did not need to hear the words to understand the shape of the problem. In buildings like this, embarrassment did not stay private for long. It traveled faster than elevators. By late morning, a quiet message had already moved through the staff. Someone had a picture from Monday. Not posted publicly. Not yet. Just passed from screen to screen with that cowardly half-laugh people used when they wanted cruelty to look harmless. Marcus found out from a young information technology technician named Caleb, who caught him near the server closet on 39. Caleb was 24, nervous, and always smelled faintly of energy drinks. Mr. Hale, he said, looking both ways before turning his phone around. You should see this. Marcus looked. The photo was grainy, taken from a bad angle near the lobby orchids. Vivian was stepping toward the elevators, her face composed, her shoes clearly mismatched. The caption beneath it read, "Even perfection has bad mornings." Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. Not surprise. Disappointment. Surprise belonged to people who still expected better from rooms full of adults. Where did you get that? He asked. Caleb swallowed. Manager group chat. I am not supposed to have access, but somebody forwarded it to my team. Marcus handed the phone back. Delete your copy. I did. Caleb hesitated. Should I report it? Marcus looked down the hallway, where glass walls reflected men and women moving inside conference rooms like figures trapped in clean aquariums. If you report it the wrong way, they will make the report bigger than the harm. Caleb frowned. So we do nothing? Marcus closed his toolbox latch with a soft click. No, we do it right. At 11:40, a work order came through for conference room A. Presentation system failure. Board meeting in progress. Urgent. Marcus read the request and knew before he arrived that the timing was not accidental. Trouble liked to gather where people were already tired. He took the service elevator up alone. The doors opened onto 42, and the corridor felt colder than it had the day before. Through the conference room glass, he could see Vivian standing at the head of the table. Today her shoes matched. Her suit was dark charcoal. Her hair was smooth. No visible crack anywhere. But the room had changed around her. People who once feared her now studied her. Not openly, just enough to test whether power still belonged to her. Marcus entered with his badge clipped to his jacket and his toolbox in one hand. Vivian did not look at him right away. She was reading a report, one hand resting near the edge of the table. System is not recognizing the input, a board member said, gesturing at the blank wall screen. We have been waiting 9 minutes. Marcus set his tools beneath the credenza and crouched near the connection panel. I will have it up shortly. Please do, the man said. Some of us still dress ourselves correctly and keep schedules. The room went quiet. Not silent. Quiet was what people chose when they wanted to hear what cruelty would do next. Marcus kept his hand on the cable. Vivian did not move. Her face stayed calm, but Marcus saw the thumb of her left hand press once against the side of her index finger. A small, private brace. He had seen Nia do the same thing before spelling tests. Another man gave a soft laugh. Someone else looked down at the table. Nobody defended her. That was the room's answer. Marcus unplugged the HDMI adapter, inspected the bent pin, and replaced it with one from his kit. He could have fixed the system and left. That would have been safe. That would have been ordinary. But some silences protected dignity, and some silences fed the people trying to take it. Knowing the difference was the hard part. The screen flickered awake. The company logo filled the wall in clean blue light. Marcus stood and faced the table, not Vivian. The delay came from damaged equipment, he said evenly. Not from Miss Whitmore. The board member's eyes narrowed. I do not recall asking for commentary. No, sir, Marcus said. You asked for the system to work. It does. The sentence landed with no heat in it. That made it harder to punish. Marcus placed the broken adapter on the table beside the projector remote. Small. Concrete. True. The room adjusted itself around the fact. Vivian looked at the adapter, then at Marcus. He did not hold her gaze long enough to make her owe him anything. He simply picked up his toolbox. At the door, he paused as if remembering another detail. Also, cameras near lobby east have a blind spot reflection off the orchid table, he said. Makes private phone use look public. People should be careful what they capture there. The message was quiet, but several faces changed. One of the communications men looked down. A woman near the far end closed her laptop halfway. Vivian saw it all. Marcus left before the room could decide what to do with him. In the hallway, he exhaled slowly, the way a man does after stepping off a curb just before a bus passes. He had not raised his voice. He had not accused anyone. He had placed a mirror in the room and let people recognize themselves if they could bear it. 10 minutes later, the service elevator opened before he could press the down button. Vivian stood inside. Alone. The executive mask was still there, but thinner now, worn at the edges. Marcus stepped back to let her pass. She did not. Ride down. She asked. It was not really a question about elevators. Marcus entered. The doors closed, sealing them in with the faint smell of metal and expensive soap. For 12 floors, neither of them spoke. The numbers descended in red silence. Finally, Vivian said, You did not have to do that. Marcus kept his eyes on the doors. No, ma'am. Then why? He thought about Caleb's phone. Nia's purple shoelace. A man joking in a room where everyone understood the target and pretended not to. Because laughing first is easy, he said. Protecting somebody before the room decides what they are worth is harder. Vivian turned her face toward the closed doors. Her reflection looked back at her from the brushed steel, pale and tired and still standing. Daniel used to say I collected difficult people because easy people bored me. Marcus gave the smallest smile. Sounds like Daniel had opinions. Too many. Her voice softened on the words. The elevator passed 28, 27, 26. I hated it when he noticed I was not fine. Marcus nodded once. Being seen can feel like being caught. Vivian looked at him then. And what does it feel like when someone sees you kindly? The question stayed between them longer than the elevator ride should have allowed. Marcus did not answer right away. Maybe because he did not know. Maybe because the answer had Nia's face in it, and his wife's absence, and too many years of being treated like visibility was a risk. The doors opened on the lobby level. Morning light spilled across the floor. Vivian did not step out immediately. Neither did he. At last, Marcus said, "It feels like not having to hold your breath for a minute." Vivian lowered her eyes. The lobby moved beyond them, unaware that something inside the elevator had shifted without making a sound. Then she stepped out first. Marcus followed with his toolbox in hand. And for the first time since he had known her, Vivian Whitmore slowed her pace, so he was not walking behind her. They crossed the lobby side by side, not equal in title, not equal in the way the building understood them, but close enough that people noticed. That was the first thing Marcus saw. The receptionist looked up and forgot to hide her surprise. A man from legal paused near the coffee station with his cup halfway to his mouth. Earl lifted one eyebrow from behind the security desk, then looked back down at his logbook like an old man wise enough not to stare at weather changing. Vivian did not explain. Marcus did not perform. They simply walked through the bright center of Whitmore Meridian while the room tried to decide what kind of story it was watching. At the west wall, near the security office, Vivian slowed. Nia's homework was still spread across the small desk inside. A yellow pencil lay beside a half-finished page of fractions. Her purple shoelace had left a faint streak of playground dust on the chair leg. Vivian looked at the little room longer than expected. She does her homework here? Some mornings, Marcus said. Earl keeps an eye on her when I have early calls. Earl cleared his throat without looking up. She keeps an eye on me. Corrects my spelling. Vivian's mouth softened. The expression was small, but in that lobby it felt almost disruptive. A woman who could silence a boardroom had just been disarmed by a second-hand pencil and a child's absence. Her phone vibrated inside her bag. She let it ring out. Marcus noticed. So did she. I used to answer everything, she said quietly. Even at dinner. Even in hospitals. Even at funerals. Marcus said nothing. The right silence could hold more than agreement. Vivian looked through the glass doors toward the street, where traffic moved in short, impatient bursts. Daniel hated that. He said I was always available to everyone except the people standing in front of me. The words did not break her. That was not the kind of pain she carried. Hers did not spill. It condensed. It sat behind the eyes and made ordinary light difficult. Marcus shifted the toolbox in his hand. My wife used to leave notes on the refrigerator, he said. The sentence came out before he could wrap it in caution. Vivian turned toward him, but did not move closer. What kind of notes? Marcus looked at Nia's homework through the office window. Small ones. Milk. Dentist at 3. Do not forget purple socks. Sometimes. Just a heart if she was mad and did not want to say goodbye angry. He gave a faint breath that was not quite a laugh. After she passed, I kept finding them in drawers. Jacket pockets. Between cookbooks. Felt like the house was still talking, but only in pieces. Vivian's face changed. Not with pity. He would have stepped back from pity. This was recognition, quiet and unspectacular, the kind that did not try to own what it understood. Nia remembers her? Some. Not enough. Too much. Depends on the day. The lobby moved around them, but slower now, as if the building had learned to lower its voice. A woman from Human Resources walked by, saw Vivian standing with the maintenance man near the security office, and looked away too quickly. Marcus caught it. Vivian caught him catching it. For once, she did not stiffen. You know what they will say, she said. Yes, ma'am. And you are still standing here. Marcus looked down at the toolbox, at the scratches across the handle, at the small silver initials Nia had written on it with permanent marker 2 summers ago. People talk either way. Vivian absorbed that. Something in her shoulders released, not enough to call it peace, but enough to make the next breath easier. Then the glass doors opened, and Caleb from information technology hurried across the lobby with his laptop bag bouncing against his hip. He stopped when he saw them. His face went pale with the panic of a young man carrying news bigger than his courage. "Mr. Hale," he said, then glanced at Vivian. "Miss Whitmore, I am sorry. I did not know you were here." Vivian's executive face returned, but thinner than before. "What is it?" Caleb swallowed. "The photo. It was not just in the manager chat. Someone scheduled it to post from an anonymous account at noon. Our monitoring software flagged the company name. Communications is trying to bury it quietly." The lobby sound seemed to pull away from them. Marcus felt his grip tighten around the toolbox handle. Vivian did not look surprised. That made it worse. She looked tired in the specific way people look when the world confirms their lowest expectation of it. "How long?" she asked. Caleb checked his watch. 23 minutes. Vivian nodded once. "Thank you for telling me." Caleb looked relieved and ashamed at the same time. "I should have said something earlier." "Yes," Vivian said. "Not cruelly. Just truthfully. You should have." The young man's eyes dropped. Marcus watched Vivian then. He expected the old armor to seal her back inside itself. He expected orders. Names. Consequences. A cold sweep of authority across everyone who had laughed too softly for too long. She had every right to choose that. Maybe more than every right. But instead, she looked toward the security office again. At the pencil. The fractions. The empty chair where Nia had sat with one purple shoelace and no fear of powerful people. "Mr. Hale," Vivian said. "Would you come with me?" Marcus did not ask where. He picked up his toolbox and followed her to the security room behind the lobby, where the camera feeds glowed in neat squares across a dark wall. Earl let them in without a word. Vivian stood before the screens and watched the Monday footage. There it was. The lobby. The orchids. Herself moving through the frame. Marcus placing the reports on the counter. Marcus interrupting the receptionist. Marcus shielding the angle without making it look like protection. The next clip came from the rainy Thursday. Screws scattering across marble. Heads turning away from her. Another clip. Marcus beside the elevators, saying something to the two men who had whispered. Another. Marcus in the garage, setting the blue shoe covers down within reach and looking away. Vivian watched all of it in silence. Not the silence of control this time. The silence of a person realizing she had been cared for in a language so quiet she had almost missed it. Earl stepped out. Caleb stayed near the door, holding his laptop like a shield. Marcus stood behind Vivian, wishing suddenly that the footage would end. Kindness looked different when played back on a monitor. Less natural. More vulnerable. Vivian lifted one hand to her mouth, but she did not cry. She closed her eyes once, opened them, and let her hand fall. "You never reported any of this." Marcus shook his head. "Was not mine to report. You never told me. You already knew about the shoes." She turned then. The glow from the screens softened the edges of her face. "That is not what I did not know." Marcus met her eyes and understood. She had known the mistake. She had known the grief. She had known people were watching. What she had not known was that someone could see all of it and not make her pay for being human. On the monitor behind her, the anonymous post countdown sat frozen on Caleb's laptop screen. 17 minutes. Vivian looked at it, then at Marcus. "They want me embarrassed," she said. Her voice was calm now, but not cold. "Maybe the only way to stop that is to stop treating embarrassment like the worst thing that can happen to a person." Marcus said nothing. The sentence belonged to her. She turned to Caleb. "Do not bury it. Bring me the communications team. And pull the lobby footage." Caleb blinked. "All of it." Vivian looked once more at Marcus placing the reports on the counter in the grainy recording. A small act. Almost invisible. Almost everything. "No," she said softly. "Only the parts that show who we became when we thought no one important was watching." Caleb stared at Vivian as if she had just asked him to open a window in a submarine. "Miss Whitmore," he said carefully, "if we release footage, people will know there was something to hide." Vivian looked at the frozen screens. Marcus on one monitor, placing the reports down. Vivian on another, walking past with her face composed and her feet telling the truth. The whole building reduced to angles and timestamps. "There was something to hide," she said. "My dignity, not my shoes." No one spoke after that. Caleb lowered his eyes and began typing. His fingers moved fast, then slower, then with purpose. Marcus stood near the door, toolbox in hand, feeling the strange discomfort of watching a powerful person choose honesty when escape was still available. It was not the clean kind of courage people applauded in movies. It was smaller than that. Harder. Vivian did not expose the gossipers by name. She did not turn the moment into a punishment campaign. She approved a short internal message with no bitterness in it. A reminder about privacy, respect, the way workplaces reveal their character in small rooms before they reveal it in public reports. Under it, she allowed one 10-second clip from the lobby camera. Not the mistake, not the shoes. Only Marcus stepping quietly into the line of sight, shielding a woman from a joke before the joke could become a wound. By 12:03, the anonymous post was gone before most people ever saw it. By 12:11, the lobby had changed. Not loudly. No one apologized in the center of the marble floor. No one gathered around Vivian with sudden loyalty. People simply looked at one another differently. A receptionist put her phone face down. A man from legal stopped smiling at a message and deleted it. Earl watched the front desk with the tired satisfaction of a man who had seen decency arrive late, but arrive anyway. Vivian left the security room without making an announcement. Marcus followed a few steps behind until she slowed near the west wall. The small office was empty now. Nia's pencil still rested beside the fractions page. Vivian picked it up and turned it once between her fingers. Yellow paint. Chewed eraser. Ordinary. Your daughter left this, she said. Marcus took it gently. She leaves a trail everywhere. That is not always a bad thing. He looked at her then. The old distance between them was still there. Class. Race. Money. Job titles. 100 invisible lines drawn before either of them entered the building. But something had been placed across one of those lines that morning. Not a bridge exactly. A plank. Enough for one careful step. Vivian reached into her bag and pulled out a small card, cream-colored, plain, with handwriting on one side. Daniel's memorial is Saturday, she said. There will be yellow flowers. He liked yellow. Marcus held the card but did not read it yet. I am sorry. I know. She glanced toward the security office. Nia can come, if she wants. Children should know adults are allowed to miss people without disappearing into it. Marcus lowered his eyes. That sentence found a place in him he had not meant to leave open. Before he could answer, the revolving doors at the front of the lobby turned. A man with a press badge stepped inside, scanning the room with the hungry patience of someone looking for the softest place to press. Vivian saw him. So did Marcus. The room tightened around them. The man lifted his phone slightly. Not enough to accuse. Enough to test. Vivian's shoulders drew back, but this time the motion looked less like armor and more like breath. Marcus stepped forward, not in front of her, not behind her, but beside her. The reporter called her name. Vivian did not answer right away. She looked down once at her matching shoes, then at the yellow pencil in Marcus's hand, then toward the small office where a child had made truth sound simple. When she finally faced the doors, her voice was quiet. Some stories do not belong to strangers. Marcus stood beside her in the bright lobby, saying nothing, and somehow that silence spoke first.